Hey there, horror fans. Welcome back to Silent Screams, where we explore the darkest corners of the human mind. Tonight, we're diving into a tale that will make you question the very fabric of reality. So, dim the lights, grab your favorite blanket, and prepare to face the forbidden digit, a chilling numerical nightmare. Remember, this is just a story, or is it? Let's begin. I never thought numbers could be terrifying. Sure, math wasn't my favorite subject in school, but it was just boring, not scary. That all changed the day I stumbled upon the forbidden digit. It started innocently enough. I was working on my thesis in advanced mathematics, spending countless hours in the university library surrounded by dusty tomes and the faint smell of old paper. That's when I first noticed it, a small, leather-bound book tucked away in the far corner of the restricted section. The librarian's eyes widened when I brought it to her desk. "Where did you find this?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Before I could answer, she shook her head and pushed it back to me. "Take it. It's been waiting for you." I should have known then that something was off, but my curiosity got the better of me. That night, I cracked open the book in my dimly lit apartment. The pages were filled with complex equations and bizarre symbols I'd never seen before. As I flipped through, a loose sheet of paper fell out, covered in frantic scribbles. The digit must not be spoken. The digit must not be written. The digit must not be thought. I laughed it off as the ramblings of some math-obsessed lunatic. If only I had listened. For weeks, I pored over the book, trying to decipher its secrets. The equations seemed to dance on the page, almost alive. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, my mind racing with numbers and formulas I couldn't quite grasp. Then, one fateful night, it happened. I was working through a particularly complex problem when suddenly, everything clicked. The numbers aligned, the symbols made sense, and for a brief, terrifying moment, I saw it, the forbidden digit. It wasn't like any number I'd ever encountered. It seemed to exist between the spaces of known mathematics, a concept so alien it made my brain ache. And in that instant, I felt something shift in the world around me. The shadows in my room grew darker, more menacing. The air became thick and oppressive. And worst of all, I could hear something, a faint, rhythmic tapping coming from inside my walls. Tap. 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 I tried to shake it off, to convince myself it was just my imagination running wild. But as the days passed, things only got worse. The tapping grew louder, following me wherever I went. I'd catch glimpses of impossible angles in everyday objects, as if reality itself was bending around me. My friends started to notice something was wrong. "You look like hell," my roommate, Alex, said one morning. "Are you sleeping at all?" I forced a smile. "Just stressed about the thesis," I lied. How could I explain what was happening? They'd think I was losing my mind. Maybe I was. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Everywhere I went, I felt eyes on me, in the rustling leaves of trees, in the reflections of windows, in the static of my TV. And always, always, that incessant tapping. Tap. 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 I threw myself into my research, desperate to understand what was happening. I scoured the internet for any mention of the forbidden digit, but found nothing. It was as if the concept didn't exist outside of that cursed book. Then, late one night as I was walking home from the library, I saw him, an old man standing under a flickering streetlight, staring directly at me. His eyes were wild, his clothes tattered. As I approached, he grabbed my arm with surprising strength. "You've seen it, haven't you?" he hissed. "The digit. It's chosen you now." I tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. "Listen to me," he continued, his voice urgent. "It's not just a number. It's a key. A key to something that should have remained locked away." Before I could respond, he shoved a crumpled piece of paper into my hand and vanished into the shadows. My hands shaking, I unfolded the note. On it was a series of symbols I recognized from the book, along with a cryptic message: to banish the digit, solve the unsolvable. But beware, for knowledge comes at a price. That night, the tapping was louder than ever. I could barely think straight as I pored over the old man's note, trying to make sense of the symbols. Hours passed, and as the first light of dawn crept through my window, I had a breakthrough. The symbols weren't just mathematical notation, they were a code. A code that, when solved, would reveal a location. With trembling hands, I worked through the solution, and my blood ran cold as I realized where it was pointing. The abandoned bell tower on the edge of town. A place shrouded in local legends and whispered ghost stories. I knew I should have called someone, told them where I was going. But who would believe me? This was something I had to face alone. As I approached the crumbling tower, the air grew thick with an otherworldly fog. The tapping in my head was now a deafening roar, drowning out all other sounds. With each step up the winding staircase, I felt reality slipping away. At the top, I found a room bathed in an eerie, pulsing light. Symbols and equations covered every surface, twisting and morphing before my eyes. And in the center, hovering in midair, was a shimmering portal. I could feel it calling to me, promising answers to questions I didn't even know I had. But as I reached out towards it, a voice echoed through the chamber. "Stop!" It was the old man from the street, materializing from the shadows. "If you cross that threshold, there's no coming back. The digit will consume you, just as it did me and countless others before." I hesitated, torn between the maddening curiosity that had driven me this far and the primal fear clawing at my insides. "What is it?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The old man's eyes were filled with a mixture of pity and terror. "It's a gateway to something beyond human comprehension. A realm of pure mathematics, where our laws of physics and reality don't apply. Those who enter are forever changed, if they return at all." As if to emphasize his point, a horrifying screech emanated from the portal, sending shivers down my spine. For a moment, I caught a glimpse of what lay beyond: impossible geometries, writhing equations, and creatures made of pure numerical energy. I stumbled backward, my mind reeling. "How do we close it?" I asked, desperate for a solution. The old man shook his head sadly. "We can't. Once opened, the portal can only be sealed by someone on the other side. Someone who understands the true nature of the forbidden digit." A cold realization washed over me. I looked at the old man, then back at the portal. "You knew," I said. "You knew I'd be the one to solve it, to come here." He nodded, a single tear rolling down his weathered cheek. "I'm sorry, but it had to be done. The portal must be closed, or our entire reality will unravel." I wanted to run, to forget I'd ever seen that damned book. But deep down, I knew he was right. The tapping in my head, the distortions in reality, they were only going to get worse. Taking a deep breath, I stepped towards the portal. The old man grabbed my arm one last time. "Remember," he said, his voice barely audible over the otherworldly howls emanating from beyond. "In that realm, thought becomes reality. Your mind is your only weapon and your greatest weakness." With a final nod, I steeled myself and stepped through the shimmering threshold. The last thing I heard was the old man's voice, fading into the distance, "May God have mercy on your soul." As I felt myself being pulled into the mathematical abyss, a new terror gripped me. What horrors awaited me on the other side? And more importantly, would I ever find my way back? The world dissolved into a cacophony of numbers and impossible angles, and I knew my journey was only beginning. Whatever lay ahead, one thing was certain: I would never look at mathematics the same way again. Tap, tap, tap. The sound of reality unraveling, one digit at a time. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. I tried to return to my normal life, to forget the horrors I'd witnessed in that mathematical hellscape. But the old man's notebook haunted me, its cryptic pages filled with warnings of other cosmic terrors lurking just beyond our perception. I threw myself into my studies, desperate for a distraction. But even the most mundane equations now seemed to hide sinister secrets. I'd find myself staring at simple calculus problems, convinced that if I looked hard enough, I'd see that forbidden digit hiding between the lines. It was during a late-night study session that I first noticed it. A subtle wrongness in the air, like reality itself was holding its breath. I glanced at the clock, 3:33 a.m. The witching hour, when the veil between worlds is thinnest. That's when I heard it again. Tap, tap, tap. My blood ran cold. It couldn't be. We'd sealed it away, hadn't we? With trembling hands, I reached for the old man's notebook, flipping through its pages frantically. There, scrawled in faded ink, the digit may be banished, but its echoes linger. Watch for the signs, distortions in time, numbers that don't add up, and the ever-present tapping that heralds its return. As if on cue, the tapping grew louder, seemingly coming from inside the walls themselves. I scrambled to my feet, knocking over my chair in the process. The sound was everywhere now, a pulsing rhythm that threatened to drive me mad. I had to get out. Grabbing the notebook, I bolted for the door. But as I reached for the handle, I froze in horror. The door's surface was rippling, numbers and equations bubbling up from within the wood. "No," I whispered. "This can't be happening." I turned to the window, only to find it covered in a shimmering film of mathematical symbols. The walls, the floor, even the ceiling, everything was being consumed by this numerical invasion. In a panic, I fumbled with my phone, dialing the last number I had for the old man. It rang once, twice, and then I heard his voice, but it wasn't what I expected. "The number you have dialed has been disconnected," came an eerily familiar voice. "Please hang up and don't try again. The digit is waiting." I dropped the phone, watching in horror as it melted into a puddle of writhing equations. The room was transforming around me, reality bending and twisting into impossible shapes. I was being pulled back into that nightmarish realm. But this time, I was prepared. I clutched the notebook tightly, focusing my thoughts. If this world operated on mathematical principles, then I could use that to my advantage. I began reciting prime numbers, visualizing each one as a shield against the encroaching chaos. 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The tapping faltered, the distortions in reality seeming to recoil from my mental defenses. Emboldened, I pressed on, delving deeper into the notebook's arcane knowledge. I found a series of symbols that, when visualized together, formed a protective sigil. I traced them in the air with my finger, leaving glowing trails of pure logic in their wake. The room shuddered, caught between our world and the mathematical void. I could feel the presence of that entity from before, its rage palpable as it tried to break through my defenses. "You cannot keep me out forever," its voice boomed in my head. "The digit is eternal. It is inevitable." "Maybe," I grunted, straining to maintain my concentration. "But so is human curiosity. And we'll always find a way to fight back against things we don't understand." I poured every ounce of my will into the sigil, imagining it expanding outward, pushing back against the encroaching mathematical horror. The air crackled with energy, reality itself seeming to groan under the strain of our cosmic tug-of-war. And then, with a sound like shattering glass, the distortions vanished. The tapping stopped. My apartment returned to normal, the only evidence of the otherworldly encounter being my own ragged breathing and the faint smell of ozone in the air. I collapsed onto the floor, exhausted but victorious. I had faced the digit again and survived. But I knew this was far from over. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into studying the notebook, determined to understand the true nature of the threat we faced. The old man's notes spoke of a vast network of mathematical anomalies, each one a potential gateway for cosmic horrors to enter our world. The forbidden digit was just one of many. There were imaginary numbers that could alter the fabric of space-time, fractal patterns that drove viewers to madness, and equations that, when solved, could summon beings from dimensions beyond human comprehension. I realized that I couldn't face this alone. I needed to find others who understood the danger, who could help me protect our world from these numerical nightmares. My search led me to hidden online forums and secretive academic circles. I met physicists who had glimpsed otherworldly entities in their particle accelerators, cryptographers who had decoded messages from beyond our universe, and mathematicians driven to the brink of insanity by their discoveries. Together, we formed a clandestine group dedicated to keeping these mathematical horrors at bay. We called ourselves the Calculus of Shadows, guardians of the thin line between reality and the infinite numerical void. Years passed, and our battles against these cosmic forces became more frequent and more desperate. We learned to weaponize paradoxes, to create mathematical firewalls that could repel interdimensional invaders, and to recognize the signs of impending incursions. But with each victory, the attacks grew stronger. It was as if our very resistance was drawing the attention of greater and more terrible entities from beyond. Then came the night that changed everything. I was in my study, poring over a newly discovered manuscript that promised to reveal the true nature of the digit and its kin. The air grew thick with that familiar, oppressive energy. But this time, it was different. Stronger. More malevolent. The tapping returned, but it wasn't the rhythmic beat I'd come to know. It was erratic, frenzied, like a cosmic Morse code screaming out a warning. I reached for my phone to alert the others, but before I could dial, the screen lit up with an impossible sequence of numbers. They scrolled by faster than I could read, but I caught glimpses of familiar patterns, the Fibonacci sequence, prime numbers, and buried within them all, the forbidden digit itself. The walls of my study began to melt away, revealing a vast, swirling vortex of pure mathematics. Equations and symbols danced in the air, forming intricate patterns that hurt my eyes to look at directly. And there, at the center of it all, was a being that dwarfed anything I'd encountered before. It was as if someone had taken the concept of infinity and given it malevolent life. Its form shifted constantly, one moment a fractal monstrosity, the next a swirling mass of living equations. "Your resistance ends now," it boomed, its voice shaking the very foundations of reality. "The barriers between worlds have grown too weak. The age of human mathematics is over. Embrace the infinite or be erased from existence." I stood my ground, summoning every scrap of knowledge and power I'd accumulated over the years. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't be enough. This entity was beyond anything we'd faced before. As the vortex closed in around me, threatening to tear me apart at the atomic level, I made a desperate gamble. I reached into the swirling chaos and grabbed hold of the nearest mathematical construct, a pulsing, writhing mass of pure numerical energy. The pain was indescribable, like every cell in my body was being rewritten. But I held on, forcing my mind to comprehend the incomprehensible. In that moment, I understood. The digit, the entity, the very nature of reality itself, it was all connected. With the last of my strength, I spoke. Not in words, but in pure mathematical truth. A single equation that encompassed everything, that brought order to chaos and chaos to order. The entity recoiled, its form fluctuating wildly. "What have you done?" it shrieked, its confidence replaced by terror. "Balance the equation," I managed to say, even as I felt my own existence beginning to unravel. The vortex imploded, reality itself seeming to fold in on itself. I caught one last glimpse of my study, of the normal world I'd fought so hard to protect, before everything went white. When I opened my eyes, I found myself floating in an endless void. But it wasn't the chaotic mathematical hell I'd come to know. This was something else. A place of perfect balance, where the infinite and the finite coexisted in harmony. I realized then what I'd done. In that moment of desperate understanding, I'd rewritten the fundamental laws of our universe. The digit, the entities, the cosmic horrors, they were no longer a threat, because they were now an integral part of a greater, more stable reality. As I drifted in this new existence, I felt a presence. Not malevolent, but curious. A consciousness vast beyond imagining, yet somehow familiar. "You've done well," it said, its voice resonating through the very fabric of this new reality. Few have ever glimpsed the true nature of existence, let alone reshaped it. "What happens now?" I asked, marveling at how calm I felt in the face of such cosmic enormity. "Now, you choose. You can return to your world, to live out your life in peace, knowing that the mathematical horrors are forever balanced. Or you can remain here, as a guardian of this new equilibrium." I thought of my friends, my family, the life I'd left behind. But I also thought of the responsibility I now carried. The knowledge that someone needed to watch over this delicate balance, to ensure that the cosmic equations remained solved. "I'll stay," I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. The presence seemed to nod in approval. "Then let your journey truly begin. The universe is vast, and there are more wonders and terrors to discover than you can imagine." As I felt myself merging with this new reality, becoming one with the cosmic mathematics that now governed existence, I couldn't help but smile. The horrors I'd faced, the nightmares I'd endured, they had led me here, to a place of infinite possibility and perfect balance. The tapping that had haunted me for so long was gone, replaced by the gentle hum of a universe in harmony. And as I set out to explore this new existence, I realized that my greatest adventure was just beginning. For in the end, the true horror wasn't in the cosmic entities or the forbidden mathematics. It was in the unknown, in the mysteries that lurked just beyond our understanding. But now, as a guardian of this new reality, I would face those mysteries head-on, armed with the knowledge that even the most terrifying unknowns could be understood, balanced, and ultimately embraced. The forbidden digit was no more. But the infinite wonders of the mathematical universe were mine to explore forever.